Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. It's not warm when she's away. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone, and she's always gone too long. Anytime she goes away. Read about your band in some local page. Didn't mention your name. Didn't mention your name. The sweet Georgia breezes, safe, cool, and warm. Headed up north, you headed north. On and on. Just one look at you, and I know it's gonna be a lovely day.
Welcome to the 70s versus the 80s, my fellow pop culture loving babies. If you ever had to take your mother's scented candles off the top of the TV just so you could help the TV repairman with his butt crack showing drag your behemoth Zenith across the steep shag carpeting just so he could get to the back to fix the vertical hold. If any of those very specific words make sense to you, then this is the podcast for you. Hello, everybody. This is Wolfman Mike on the mic, and I can talk Bill Withers songs all night. I can talk the Replacement songs all night, but I can't talk Moon Zappa songs all night, but she's in here a little bit too. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host. He is pretty funky for a Bry guy. It's Spunky Comstock himself, Brian. And in case you can't remember what Brian sounds like, he sounds a little something like this.
You know, I'm struggling in English class, and these guys are writing these fantastic songs.
And that's what we are talking about today. We are talking about fantastic songs. This is our first ever Music Club Listener Appreciation episode. So we're going to bring you two artists. You know some of their songs. You might know their popular songs, but do you know they're really good songs? So my hope is you're going to pick up some songs to listen to for this summer, some songs that you forgot about, songs that you never knew about. We got all the good stuff, so let's listen in on that. But first, we got a brand new segment called Gag Me with a Spoon. Let's check it out.
Look at you, and I know it's gonna be a lovely day.
So Brian, I got a new segment here. You want to hear what it's called?
Oh yeah, I'm always open to new segments. Lay it on me.
So I'm thinking about calling this one Totally Bitchin' or Gag Me with a Spoon. I think we got a little sounder for it.
Super nice, like so bitchin'. Bark out, gag me with a spoon.
Do you remember that song, Brian?
Those are perfect sounders. I remember that song. Perfect sounders.
So the point of this is we're going to remember something that used to be totally bitchin', but now it's lame. So it's like Gag Me with a Spoon. You're going to do that, and I'm going to do the reverse of that. I'm going to do something that's cool now that our kids have, and I wish we had.
All right, I'm on board with that. What is it? Lay it on me.
This is what my daughter has, or our kids today have, and I wish we had it when we were kids, but it's water parks and indoor water parks.
Super nice, like so bitchin'.
I mean, I know like Holland and Denmark had them like in the 80s, but really, you know, around here it's all about Wisconsin Dells. For those that don't know,
I don't know.
Wisconsin Dells is this crazy place. It's 3 hours outside of Chicago, 3 hours outside of the Twin Cities, where we live. So it's like halfway between. They got like just 5-10 water parks. And when they got Noah's Ark in 1994, you know, the indoor water park.
It's like Las Vegas for water parks.
That was just a game changer. And they must have what, like 50 miniature golf courses there. So water parks, I mean, so yeah, they always had them. I don't know why when we were kids, they didn't have a technology to make a slide and throw a water hose up on top to have the water run down. But now there's so much more. They get those wave pools are just crazy. I mean, my secret advice to everybody is get right up to the edge of the pool, because that's where the waves get even larger, is right towards the edge of it. And I mean, I've been to those in Wisconsin Dells where they have a lifeguard every 10 feet, and they were actually pulling kids out. I mean, those things get pretty gnarly. And then I like those surfing where you can do the boogie board or body board, or I've even seen people do real surfboards where you can get up on your knees on the boogie board, or you can hug it to your chest and do barrel rolls and then try to get back up before you wipe out. And they're just amazing. And I just really wish we had those when we were a kid. I think they're really great.
So Minnesota in wintertime, I had some travel loss. I was watching some YouTube destination videos, and one of them was on the water parks at Disney. In 2006, we went to both of them with the family when my kids were 7 and 9, so they got to enjoy, Disney style water parks with huge water slides and wave pools and raft rides and everything. But Disney had one in the 70s. It was kind of out on a real lagoon, but they were having troubles keeping the water up, and it was real rudimentary compared to what you see now. And so it was amazing. I remember Summit Plummet. It's like 120 feet speed slide, and I think they had a radar gun there, and I hit like 57 miles an hour, and then you hit that water at the bottom. It's like falling off a motorcycle and just bouncing on your pain like you landed on your tailbone wrong. I needed that as a kid. My son was tall enough. My daughter wasn't tall enough. So that was like in the 2000s, I think, is when the water parks really started to have like an arms race. Like the Noah's Ark and stuff, they were around in the late 80s. Family Land and Riverview Park down in the Wisconsin Dells we talked about earlier. But they had like 4 slides and a tube ride, and that was about the extent of it. And it really became an arms race. And now all over the place, they have these amazing water parks like destination water parks. We would have Clark Griswold the whole thing, put everyone in the family truckster and drove to one in the 70s if they had them like they do now.
It's funny. There is a documentary on Netflix. Maybe one of our listeners will have to tell us the name of it, but it's about a water park, I believe in the East Coast, where like kids would break their arms they'd get a broken leg, broken arm like every day. And somehow they were allowed to keep in business. And it's not a Wet and Wild. I can't remember what it was called, but
no,
somebody will remind us the name of that.
Yeah, I've watched it too.
Maybe we'll get the notes to what that was called.
Yeah, they tried like a 360 slide, and people were like dummies were getting hurt, and so it was
So just my final notes on that, Brian, is we're talking about Wisconsin Dells, going to Wisconsin. If you don't want a water park, I always like tubing down the river, the old fashioned. You could do that in the 1800s, 1900s, and so we have Apple River. And anytime you strap a tube to your butt and drink alcohol, you always do it in Wisconsin. So we have the Apple River in Wisconsin, which is a great place to go tubing in a natural river. I don't know what my point was there, but every time you go to Wisconsin, you got a tube on your butt and you're drinking alcohol. So
tube on your butt, drinking beer, and then I think when you get off, they serve you cheese curds.
So that was my edition. So now, Brian, you were going to say something that was totally bitching back in the 70s and 80s. That's totally gag me with a spoon today, kind of lame today.
That's my feeling. So 1976, July 4th, just amazing going on. There was
super nice, like so bitchin'.
Fireworks in every community, great community get-togethers, and I was just amazed. And then the next year, I was like, oh, it's almost 4th of July. This will be cool. We watch this stuff on TV, and I know there's going to be great fireworks around, and so these get-togethers. And then it wasn't.
Bark out. Gag me with the spoon.
And I was like trying to figure out why. And it wasn't until I got into my adulthood that I realized that was the bicentennial, 200 years as a nation. So that was a big blowout, big 4th of July celebration. Hasn't been the same. And now I think nowadays you don't really have as much for community celebrations. People buy fireworks, send them off their backyards. They'll have picnics. They'll get together in small groups. But we don't have that big community get together where everyone shows up for the fireworks.
I don't know.
There's parades. There's like street dances. All these kind of things that we used to do in the 70s to have a celebration that now everyone kind of just has our parties with their own small groups. And so my nomination for something that was bitching then, but gagging with the spoon now, was the 1976 4th of July celebration.
Bark out. Gag me with the spoon.
I just remember everything being red, white, and blue. I don't know if I actually remember the 4th of July because we were just so young back then.
I don't know.
But I remember that whole year, everybody had the red, white, and blue flags on their pants pockets, and everything was red, white, and blue. And that's interesting because we're coming up on 250 years. I think it'll be what, 2026 will be 250 years?
2026 would be 250 years.
That'll be interesting to see if that's a big deal or not around the 4th of July and the whole year.
Is that going to be like a bicentennial?
A quarter?
In Minnesota was 150 years. There was a
I don't know.
something. Yeah, I say quarter of a thousand. We'll go that route.
So that wraps up our brand new segment that we are calling
Super, super nice. Like, so bitchin'. Bark out. Gag me with the spoon.
When you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Please swallow.
Mike, I think it's time to take our listeners to what I'm going to call music appreciation class. We're going to look at a couple artists, one from the 70s, one from the 80s, who are known for a song or two, but we really want to kind of look at the depth and the breadth of their catalog and get you listening to some songs deeper than, some deep tracks, as opposed to just that one song by that one artist. Because they're not one-hit wonders. They're fantastic artists and groups, and our job here at the 70s and 80s is to get you to appreciate this stuff from the 70s and 80s, and I think that's what we're going to do now. Yeah, and we have I'm really excited about these artists today. Like our 70s one is just an amazing vocalist, and then our 80s one is a group that everybody loves, but they had no radio hits, and we're going to discuss why when we get to them. But yeah, I think the first artist was a very definition of, I don't know any songs by that artist, and then every song you hear by him is like, oh, that's a great song that I've heard before. Oh, that's that artist that does it? Yeah. So that's my thoughts on the first artist. Well, the first artist we're going to talk about is the great Bill Withers, and like the way you described it is perfect, because when we were kids, that movie Lean On Me came out. And when we were like, I want to say we were like 14 or so, 13, 14, and they played that song on the radio a million times, and they never said the artist's name because they were kind of promoting the song in the movie, not really the artist, because the artist was a 70s, kind of an older, and I guess they probably considered him to be a serious artist, but I think he's a lot of fun. But he wasn't a pop star, so they didn't really promote his name on the pop radio. They would just play the song, and it was the kind of song, what do you say that song about? Say your line about going to the tire shop. Yeah, well, yeah, you'd go to the grocery store, the auto parts store, and the proctologist, and you'd hear that song in all three of those locations.
If you need a friend, call me.
It didn't quite reach Celine Dion levels. One, because it's a better song, and two, and it wasn't as played to death as the Celine Dion one from Titanic. Yeah, Lean On Me was just played, that movie was pretty popular, and the song, they just played it nonstop on a couple different radio stations. So that was kind of our introduction to Bill Withers. And so a lot of people, everybody knows that song. It is a good song. I thought it got overplayed, but not his fault. It was just a great song. And then the other song I think he's really known for is Just the Two of Us, which he actually didn't write. It was written by Grover Washington Jr., who I think did some of the Superfly. He's kind of a jazzist that did the Superfly soundtrack and stuff. Just the Two of Us was made popular. It was on Will Smith, his first solo album. So this is when he let go of Jazzy Jeff or DJ Easy Rock. I can't remember who that other guy's name was, but his first solo record, he had Just the Two of Us. And Just the Two of Us got played, the Bill Withers version and the Will Smith both got played a lot. I really like the music, especially the intro to it. I really like the verse. I think the chorus is a little played out, though, and I blame Will Smith. I think he slapped that chorus way too much. Yeah, I would say he dropped that dead weight Jazzy Jeff from his life and replaced it with something so much better. We're afraid to embrace the controversy here in the 70s versus the 80s podcast.
Good things might come to those who wait, but not for those who wait too late. we gotta go for all we know. Just the two of us. We can make it if we try. Just the two of us.
All right, well, so now you kind of touched base on those two songs that people know, but let's dig into the catalog. Let's get some meaty pieces of other Bill Withers songs, because these songs are fantastic. They are not album filler. These are really good songs.
Yes. I think his first song was 1971's Ain't No Sunshine. I kind of played that in the intro and coming in here. I think the vocals on that are just above reproach. I mean, I just love the vocals on that song.
We talked a little bit during our Blues Brothers Grease episode about how Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles, James Brown are maybe among the 10 best singers of all time. When you listen to Ain't No Sunshine, those vocals give you like chills up and down your spine.
Exactly.
It's just the right amount of there's some pain and some he's almost like kind of wailing, and he's letting it show through. It's just, there's some pace changes, and I think it's just a fantastic song.
Yeah, it's excellent. That might be my favorite Bill Withers song. It's hard to say because there's so many other good ones.
I know. I know it is.
But ain't no sunshine when she's gone.
I would say it's. I think if you pin me down, it would be my favorite. But then I literally I'm not sure which ones. I'm gonna let you kind of take the lead on this. Which ones you want to talk about next?
Brian, I put in the call on Facebook to have listeners write in what they think about the artist we're talking to today. And I got our old friend Beth. You remember Beth from the Seinfeld episode? That's a really fun episode. She wrote in and she wrote, and this is not Beth. If you want to hear Beth's lovely voice, go back to that Seinfeld episode. We're going to have AI Annie help us out with her. I thought it would be fun if we have an AI voice instead of me or Brian's gruff voice reading off her words.
I'm glad you're using a voice, because while Beth has a great voice, she does say that she likes grape freezies the best, and that's just not. We're not going to allow that voice on this podcast again if the person likes grape freezies the best.
Oh, Brian's going to freeze her out for liking the purple freezies the best. All right.
Now she can come back on anytime she wants.
So here's what Beth had to say.
Bill Withers just rules. Who is he and what is he to you? Is the ultimate jam.
I got to agree with Beth there. I mean, that song is just a nasty, funky song that nobody makes like that anymore. And I love the lyrics where he says, "Now when I add the sum of you and me, I get confused when I keep coming up with three. Too much for one man, but not enough for two.
Who is he and what is a he to you? Now when I add the sum of you and me, I get confused and I keep coming up with three. You're too much for one man, but not enough for two. That gummit up. Who is he and what is a he to you?
Nasty lyrics there, and I just love the music to that. That's just a funky jam that they don't really make those songs anymore. So I think that's a great alternative song. I think Apple has it as like his 8th best song.
Yeah.
It's just a great song.
That's one thing. We touched on a couple. One is the 70s with the singer-songwriters. We've talked about Jimmy Buffett, kind of started in the 70s. If you get into the lyrics of the songs, they're wonderful. The same with Gordon Lightfoot. When he passed, we talked about the lyrics to his songs and appreciated them. Bill Withers is another one, these singer-songwriters from the 70s era, and the depth to the lyrics, the meaning behind them. We can pass off the 70s as a drug-fueled era of big excess with the rock bands that they'd be tearing up hotel rooms and everything, like Zeppelin and the Allmans and Skinnerd. But the other part of the music story of the 70s are these great singer-songwriters. And Bill Withers fits right in with the best of them from that era. And I know we'll probably talk about more because we're going to maybe make this a reoccurring bit of having music appreciation, kind of delving back into the 70s and 80s, back when they made albums and we weren't streaming everything and you had to save up your money and ride your bike to a record store. Or if you grew up like Mike and I in third tier, fourth tier suburbs, when you went grocery shopping and there was a record store near the grocery store, you take your saved up money and go over to the record store. All right, well, I said one of my uncovered gems of Bill Withers, although it is fourth on his Spotify list, is Use Me. I really like that as a playful relationship, and hey, I don't mind being used because I'm using you too, and hey, as long as everything's going good, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Kind of the other side of a breakup song, like things are going well now.
I love, where he sings about, his brother sat him down and talked to him. And he says he ought to not let her walk on me. And he says, brother, if you only knew, you'd wish you were in my shoes.
Yeah.
You keep on using me.
My brother sit me right down and he talked to me. He told me that I ought not to let you just walk on me. And I'm sure he meant well. Yeah, but when our talk was through, I said, brother, if you only knew, you'd wish that you were in my shoes. You just keep on using me until you use me up.
Yeah, I like the funky. That's just a funky, just a badass, another funky badass song. And I know they used it in the movie 1999's Best Picture, American Beauty. I think was that the Kevin Spacey movie? They used it in there. Yeah, they used it in there quite effectively. Yeah, just a funky song that, like I said, you don't really hear that kind of funk anymore. And I had this old rock encyclopedia kind of before the internet. It was from the 90s. And I looked up Bill Withers in it, and they almost kind of apologize. They're like, hey, if you're used to the smooth sounds of Lean on Me and just the two of us, they go, his other work does kind of get into the hard funks. You should be forewarned. And I don't know why they forewarn us, because I really like that stuff. Yeah.
Speaking of before the internet and rock encyclopedias, I remember, I don't know if it was technically a date, but going with someone of the opposite gender, and we ended up at a library looking up all these old music encyclopedias and things like that, and it would have like track listings and who was on what album back in the days before the internet, and lyrics where you can see lyrics, and then of course the lyrics still have typos or misheard things even when it's written down.
Oh, one thing I was going to ask you off topic, do you remember when you used to buy those, you'd go into like Ben Franklin or whatever, and they'd have those bubblegum rock albums? They kind of look like a CD case. They're about that size, maybe a little smaller. They had an album inside that was bubblegum.
Oh, no, I don't.
Oh, you don't?
We just,
I'll have to look that up.
It must have been in a harder part of town where we just had candy cigarettes. We didn't have candy albums.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up and see if I can find something on that. Okay.
Yeah, we got to put, if you find it, put a picture of it on the 70 vs. 80s podcast Facebook page. Lovely Day is a fantastic Bill Withers song that the local sports station, KFAN, they often will play it on a Monday after a Vikings victory, which happens kind of often in like September, October, November, less often in December, rarely in January, and never in a February.
That's what, you want to know who got me into Bill Withers? It's funny you should mention that is the Minnesota Vikings radio announcer he's been for like over 20 years, Paul Allen. He's a huge Bill Withers fan. He's kind of the national darling now. He's got crazy white hair that goes in every direction. And if you listen to NFL highlights, they go for him now because he just has he's loose. He just says all these crazy things. After 20 years, the national kind of discovered him after this long time.
Yeah.
But he's a huge Bill Withers fan. Unfortunately, I tried emailing him and I tried I tried getting him on Twitter just if I could get a comment about what Bill Withers means to him, but he's a hard man to get a hold of, I guess. So,
Lovely Day is fantastic, and maybe some February Monday morning at 9 a.m. we'll hear it on KFAN. That means the Vikings would have won the Super Bowl. Maybe.
So those are all just
don't put any money on it.
Okay. So let's hear from Beth one more time here.
Just listening to Bill Withers all day. What's the better song? Grandma's Hands or No Diggity, which sampled it?
And then Kat, also from Vermont like Beth, she answered,
both in their own way, though No Diggity is vastly easier for me to sing. Bill has hella range.
And I think we agree Bill has hella range. Do you know anything about that No Diggity song? It's actually from 1996 from Blackstreet's second album. I kind of think it was one of their biggest hits.
1996, I would have been deep into like Jimmy Buffett, Steve Earle, a lot of those things. I've heard it because it's in pop culture everywhere. I have a wife who's more into hip hop and 80s and 90s stuff than I am. If you haven't gathered it already on this podcast, it's like my music interest started in the 70s and then developed and went backwards into like the 60s and even back to the 50s with some jazz stuff.
No Diggity, you'll be surprised to learn the track sold 1.6 million copies in 1996 and won the 1996 Grammy Award for Best R&B Performance by a duo or group with vocals. Of course, it used samples from Bill Withers' Grandma's Hands.
He's telling a story, has this fabulous voice, lots of range, good lyrics. That one's kind of like that rhythm churns nice and slow. It's kind of went to church on Sunday and she's talking to you, but in his fantastic voice, and it's one of those that draws you. I've said about Gordon Lightfoot, those songs, his voice and the way they flowed kind of drew you in, like you're going down like kind of down the stream or something like that, and Bill Withers kind of draws you in, like it's like you're walking towards something fun that's going to be happening, and it's just that little kind of beat. Just the music speaks to you more than just what the lyrics say. It engages with your body and makes you want to move, or it just, like I said, Ain't No Sunshine puts chills down my spine, and Grandma's Hands with that kind of beat to it, it just hypnotizes you and just lay more of these fantastic vocals on you.
Yeah, so that's kind of why we're doing this segment. We just want to, you might not be familiar, I'm sure you might be familiar with these songs, you didn't know they were all by one artist, or you might, and you're going to discover a couple new songs. And if you just love great vocals, you cannot go wrong with Bill Withers. Unfortunately, he passed away 2020, kind of right during the pandemic. He passed away. Just a great artist. You can just listen to him all day long. He's got a deep catalog.
Yeah. Well, I think Bill Withers is going to get the 70s vs. the 80s podcast seal of approval for being the epitome of a fantastic 70s music artist with these great singer-songwriter. He's going to be on the 70s vs. the 80s podcast. He's up there in the team photo with greatest singers of all time with Aretha and Ray and
when you put when
James
Brian
Brown.
the Spunky Comstock put somebody with Aretha Franklin, he doesn't do that lightly. He's serious about that. That means something.
Aretha Franklin is the cream of the cream.
And it sounds like Beth was listening to him all day. Back in her episode, she got me re-interested in Meatloaf, somebody I kind of forgot about, and then I started listening to him all day. So that's kind of what we want you to do here, folks, is just kind of rediscover someone you kind of forgot or didn't know all their music. Bill Withers was just a beloved character. The next group we're going to talk about is kind of under the radar, is beloved, but kind of under the radar.
I know. Hey, I ought to leave the young thing alone, but ain't no sunshine when she's gone. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone.
Johnny always takes more than he needs. Knows a couple chords, knows a couple leads. forgets a couple chords, forgets a couple breaks. And everybody tells me that Johnny is hot. Johnny needs something, but he ain't got. And Johnny's gonna die. Johnny's gonna die. Johnny's gonna die.
You can tell who we're talking about next. It's the Replacements. This is a group that had oodles and oodles of talent. Never really broke through commercially. I don't think it was because of their talents. I think it was because of them, and we're going to talk about that. But it's a really beloved band. We just played a little bit of Johnny's Gonna Die. So this is when lead singer of the Replacements, Paul Westerberg, he went and saw the New York Dolls, I think at First Avenue in Minneapolis. And he saw Johnny Thunder was drowning in drugs, alcohol, and unhealthy relationships. When he went and saw him play, he was kind of discouraged by how he couldn't play. So he wrote that song, Johnny's Gonna Die. You just heard the lyrics there. Johnny always takes more than he needs, knows a couple chords, knows a couple leads. Johnny always needs more than he takes, forgets a couple of chords, forgets a couple of breaks. And then you got that guitar, the guitar riff kind of goes na 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 na, which is just crazy.
Johnny's gonna die. Na, 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 na.
This was their first album, so he must have wrote that song when he was like 20. You know, and then he goes on to be one of the greatest songwriters of the 80s. What do you think about writing that song when you're so young? You have that kind of knowledge to write that.
You know, as a person who struggled to get C's in English class in high school, I'm amazed sometimes at these young songwriters that are so like they're worldly, they're really tuned in. He's seeing about how the music industry does kind of chew up and spit out its talent, and especially coming out of the 70s and into the 80s, when you have all the people that have died of drug overdoses, things like that. Every town you go to, there's someone that wants to get close to the band and get, rub shoulders with them and will be their supplier in each town. So they always have access to it.
Tell me that I'm satisfied. Hey, are you satisfied?
You need something because you get such a high from playing music in front of adoring fans and all the energy that's that. And then it's like encore's over, amps are shut off, you're back in some motel room, or maybe you're on a bus somewhere. You got all this adrenaline in you and nothing to do with it, and it leads to people abusing things. If you're famous, not famous, he's really kind of captures that sentiment in this song as a 20-year-old, and it's amazing to have that like perspective when you're at the age of you're just trying to get your game up enough so you can get laid and you're looking maybe for a life partner, second, and things like that, and you're still, you haven't seen enough of the world, you haven't expanded your vocabulary, you've read about things or people have told you stories, but you haven't experienced a lot of these things for yourself yet. And yet here's someone at 20 dropping lyrics like this.
It's just so ironic. We're going to talk about this, but Paul Westerberg seems like he's kind of disgusted with the self-destruction, kind of writing a song, being warning about that. And the Replacements' career is, my thesis today is just about the self-sabotage they do to their whole career, because it should be a group that we go, oh yeah, the Replacements, everybody knows them. When they first came out, they were up against, everybody's like, who's going to be bigger, REM or the Replacements? And Peter Buck kind of even played on I Will Dare. He played some of the guitar for the Replacements. They were kind of friends. They came out at the same time. Everyone's like, who's going to be bigger? Who's going to be bigger? Well, everybody knows REM. I don't think everybody knows the Replacements. But you listen to the top 10 REM songs, put them against the top 10 Replacement songs, or go, heck, with those groups, you can go top 20, top 30. They have so many great songs. And I don't think you're going to see any disparity in talent level between the two. So, Brian, we were discussing how young Paul Westerberg, he must have been like 19, 20 when he wrote that song. I'm going to give him a silver medal to Steven Tyler. So you know this song, the lyrics Dream On here, it starts out with every time I look in the mirror, all these lines in my face getting clear, which kind of, I always thought it was somebody looking in the mirror seeing themselves get older.
Every time that I look in the mirror, all these lines in my face getting clearer. The past is gone. It ran by like dusk to dawn.
Do you know how old Steven Tyler was when he wrote this song?
To Dream On, I believe, is from one of their early, like 74 album. Like, I don't know if it's Rocks in the Attic or
1973.
And so he's also got to be almost like a teenager, 19, 20. I know Greg Allman wrote Whipping Post around the time of being, 20, 21 years old. So I'm going to say that Steven Tyler's probably in that, 19, 20, 21 range as well. Again, I'm struggling in English class, and these guys are writing these fantastic songs.
He was 17 years old, Brian, when he wrote that song.
Wow.
And yeah, I like that you brought up Whipping. I didn't know that Greg Allman was 20 when he wrote Whipping Post. I love when you hear that part of Whipping Post. It sounds like somebody being led to the whipping post. That's what the opening, it just sounds like somebody being led to the whipping post. I love that.
Yeah, I've read somewhere that bass run has started out, sounds like that would be the soundtrack playing as the Devil's Chariot goes down the street. That bump, ba-da-da, bump, ba-da, bump, ba-da, bump, bump. It's kind of that the three triads and then a couple hard hits to start the triads again. And maybe it is you're trying to pursue music and it's daunting to try to get into it, and it's even tougher nowadays. That you're not going to go get a straight job, you're not going to continue your schooling, you're going to try to make it in this business that chews up and eats up people, that you get wise real quick and you can write some of these songs because you are in that sink or survive mode of trying to become a musical, make a living as a working musician at such a young age.
So that's kind of with the Replacements here. So they start out as you didn't really hear it in that Johnny's Gonna Die, but that's really like a garage punk. Their first two albums are garage punk. And then later, so it was two brothers, Bob Stinson, and then he taught his 11-year-old brother, here we are going with the age again, he taught his 11-year-old brother, Tommy Stinson, how to play bass because they needed a bass player. And then Chris Mars was the drummer. And then Paul Westerberg would be walking home from his Minneapolis neighborhood and he would hear some crazy music coming out of a garage. He'd go put his ear to the thing and he just heard this great music. And then eventually he ran into the group and he started singing along with them. And he just became enamored with Tommy because he's just a cute little 11, 12-year-old kid. And it was kind of one of the sad parts about the group is eventually Bob Stinson, his drugs and alcohol overtakes him. You can read a great book called The Troubled Boys. I read the book. So Bob Stinson, his drug and alcohol eventually takes over and eventually leaves the group. And they kind of lose he was kind of the garage band, hard-hitting guitarist. And it's kind of sad. Paul Westerberg almost becomes Tommy's adopted older brother. He kind of switches allegiance. He actually kicks his brother Bob out of the band. And he kind of comes closer to Paul Westerberg, and Paul Westerberg and Tommy Stinson are kind of the backbone to the later Replacements. So like this all to say they kind of start out as a garage punk band. Yeah, later in their career they almost become adult oriented radio a little too much for me. They almost sound like the Goo Goo Dolls in their last, even though those songs were some of their most popular. They kind of get a Goo Goo Dolls, a Matchbox 20 type sound to them.
They lose the edge and the grit that made them so endearing in the first place. And some of that edge and grit drives some people off.
It was still great music, but I concentrate on the two albums, the 1984 Let It Be, and then the 1985 album Tim, which they just re-released, and it's like a brand new album now. I think those are their two best albums, and it's kind of when they were crossing over from the garage punk It's just kind of the perfect medium. It gets them catches them mid-career,
Yeah.
and they just are amazing albums. I like their I like all their Hoot Nanny. It was the album that came out. That was their third album that came out before Let It Be, and then Pleased to Meet You came out. So those 4 albums in the middle, when they're crossing over, are just amazing.
I was to say the band trajectory. Yeah, when you go from being young, energetic, new, experimental, to when you become older, more skillful, more polished. And then when there's that, the Goldilocks period of in between, when you still got the drive, the youth, the energy, and some roughness around the edges to really kind of go out and experiment with things with having gathered skills and polish yourself as musicians, that's sometimes when the best albums come out.
So and Beth also had something to say about the Replacements, so let's hear that.
The Replacements for me was discovering them at like age 40 and having this entire catalog of albums and live stuff to discover. They slowly became one of my top 5 bands of all time.
Beth, I take back my grape-flavored Freezy thing. I think she hits on a fantastic point. Is we have this treat, and we've had this joy, and we're gonna share it with our younger listeners. Is opening up a box of this music that you haven't discovered before, that came decades ago, and going down that rabbit hole is a joy. She touched on it fantastically in that quote, and I'm encouraging you, if you haven't already gone down the rabbit hole, Bill Withers and the Replacements, do it. It's well worth your while, and it'll also spur you on to look at other groups from this era, 70s and 80s, to do a deeper dive into. And then we're going to talk about more in the future. I kind of want to make this a recurring segment.
So Christopher wrote in, and he said his son Owen, who looks like he's about 2 or 3, he's got a picture of him. He's playing "Can't Hardly Wait" by the Replacements, and he's doing it as Prince. So he's doing a Prince cover of "Can't Hardly Wait," and that just reminds me. So Prince had the huge commercial "Purple Rain" in 1984, and then and the Replacements had the huge 1984 "Let It Be." They were both in Minneapolis. And when Paul Westerberg was asked if he ever met Prince, he said, yeah, he'd meet Prince, and Prince would always ask him how his sister was doing. So Brian, I got to ask you, would you be like impressed that Prince knew who you were, or would you have more forbearance that he was asking how your sister was? Which one would give you more pause there?
Depending on how much you liked your sister, you would not want Prince inquiring about her.
Okay, guys, Brian had to leave to take a quick call from work. I just wanted to end with a couple quick observations on what the Replacements meant to the history of music and what their legacy was towards it. Now, in their second album starts out with a song called "Kids Don't Follow." It was Paul Westerberg's response to U2's song "I Will Follow." This kind of starts a trend where the Replacements have a rivalry with another band, and I don't think the other band might not even know about the rivalry. So the song starts out with a Minneapolis policeman breaking up a Replacements recording. Now, I always thought this was an actor because he has such a strong Fargo accent. I was like, oh no, they went with that strong Minnesota accent that's portrayed on Fargo. You know the one.
Yeah, she dropped.
Yeah. So where you girls from?
Chaska, Le Sueur, but I went to high school in White Bear Lake. Go Bears.
Okay.
Yes, that one. But this policeman actually turned out to be a 30-year veteran, so it was his actual real accent.
This is the Minneapolis police. The party is over. If you all just grab your stuff and leave, there won't be any hassle. The party is over with. Grab your stuff and go, and then nobody goes to jail.
So now as you hear that, you hear some little kids yelling the Effenheimer back at them. It's never been confirmed, but Dave Pirner, the lead singer of Soul Asylum, claims to be one of the little kids yelling back at the policeman that got captured in that famous recording. You will remember Dave Pirner. Yes, he was a little kid long before he started dating Winona Ryder from Winona, Minnesota, that actress. And he had a little song called Runaway Train that was an MTV hit.
Way on a one-way track. Seems like I should be getting somewhere. Somehow neither here nor there.
Now, listening to that song, it's a great song. You know, it got famous because of the showing the kids, the missing kids on the video. So it was a big MTV hit. That's off the album Grave Dancers Union. While the Replacements ended up being a huge influence on Soul Asylum back in 1981, by the time 1989 rolled around, they finally got another break. This time they got to be the opening band for Tom Petty. Now, 1989 was a big year for Tom Petty. Remember Full Moon Fever, his biggest solo album, was breaking, and it had a lot of big hits like Free Falling and I Won't Back Down. And at first, things were going great with the Replacements opening up for Tom Petty. He thought they were great guys. But then they started noticing he was playing the same songs. You know, he had all these hit songs. He was playing the same songs night after night in the same order. So this greatly offended them. Basically, they were offended by Tom Petty's professionalism. So then they started messing around and they started doing things like they would play entire songs laying on their backs, staring up at the sky. One night they gave like an 8-minute, only played for 8 minutes, so Tom Petty was forced to come rushing out on the stage early, and he's like, sorry for whatever happened there. But I think it accumulated when finally one night before a show, you know how you never do the main act songs because, you know, they have to come out and play them. It'd be like an opening comedian doing the jokes of the star comedian. So they didn't exactly do that. They knew not to do that. The Replacements were smart enough to do that. Well, the big hit song at the time was Running Down a Dream, so they didn't play that song. But they did play Running Down the Drain.
Yeah, running down a dream that never would come to me. Working on a mystery, going wherever it leads. Running down a dream.
So I think Tom Petty would probably think it was pretty funny, but his managers, they just failed to find the humor in that. So they were quickly excoriated from that, and that was their chance. You know, everybody thought, well, let's put Paul Westerberg in with Tom Petty. Paul Westerberg's one of the greatest songwriters right now. Tom Petty's a great songwriter. It'll be good for him. But that's how it ended. Now you're thinking the Replacements kind of had albums from 1981 to 1991, so they're the quintessential 80s band. What happened to them in the 90s? Well, there was a little movie that came out called Singles, and this was the quintessential 1992 movie about grunge music. It was just a quintessential 90s movie. It was about the grunge music scene in Seattle. And Paul Westerberg did have 2 songs on it. He had Waiting for Somebody and Dyslexic Heart. Now, around this time, Paul was feeling really depressed, so he went to a therapist, and he was telling his therapist he was depressed because he wrote all these great songs in the 90s, and now the Seattle scene from the 1990s was copying his sound and making his sound popular when it never got popular with him. Now, his therapist immediately thinks, oh my gosh, does this guy have problems? He has delusions of grandeur. The therapist knew who Kurt Cobain was, and he knew he had the biggest songs at the time. So the therapist goes out and researches this, and he comes to the conclusion that everything Paul Westerberg said was accurate and 100% true. And it is kind of funny because there was a subplot in the movie about the Seattle-Minneapolis music rivalry. So at some point in time, Paul Westerberg finds himself on an elevator with Kurt Cobain, and Paul Westerberg goes on and writes the song World Class Bad. So that's the story of the Replacements. They never became commercial darlings, but they are loved by millions worldwide.
My final take on the 80s of the music appreciation here and the Replacements is dive deep into the Replacements while you're listening to these songs. Mike's told the stories. Read the book. Put yourself in the role of a movie producer. You're like, this would make a fantastic movie, but nobody would believe it. They think that couldn't happen, and this is a really good example of truth being stranger than fiction.
You get to me, you're always out of champagne. Treat me like a bum, don't wear no tie. 'Cause you ain't nothing but a waitress in the sky. You ain't nothing but a waitress in the sky. Oh, oh. And the sign says thank you very much for not smoking. My own son says I'm sorry I'm smoking.
Hey, Mark, we made it.
We did.
Do you like it here? Check this out. Are you loving this?
Oh, it's the 70s versus 80s podcast, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the one I was telling you about.
Oh, I'm a child of the 80s. I love this kind of stuff.
Well, you were born in the 70s.
I was born in the 70s.
And I was born in 1980, so...
Exactly. So I feel kind of at home here. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, where else I feel at home is on our podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike have been nice enough to allow us a little bit of time on their show to plug our two shows, the Film Studies podcast and the Or Is It Movie podcast. Both you can find on Spotify, Apple Tunes, anywhere you get your favorite podcasts. So until we meet again, this is Derek saying, I want my MTV.
And I'm Mean Mark. Dad, oh my!
And Brian, we haven't done one of these in a while, fortunately, but you know, with this old retro show, we're always talking about celebrity or sports deaths or whatever. Unfortunately, we have one to talk about today. So
usually it's people that were really big in the 70s and 80s. This one was big a little bit before our time. Retired in I think 74, so never saw him play in person. But he was maybe the best ambassador to baseball there ever was. The Say Hey Kid, Willie Mays, infectious personality, loved to play the game. Played it extremely well. I'm not going to get tied up in greatest of all time talk because it's really tough, especially in team sports, to quantify who's the greatest of all time because there's so many aspects. Just know that if I could pick a player to start a team from any era, any time, Willie Mays would be my first pick. He played the game when my dad and mother would have been fans of the game. He would have captured their attention. And the people that taught us the game when we were kids would have seen Willie Mays in his prime or heard about him or read about him in the newspaper. So he was just an icon. And we are losing these icons, the people that inspired the people that taught us a lot of things about life and inspired our loves of life and our joy of playing baseball when we were kids and our joy of listening to music. We're losing them. We need to always take a step back at this time and just remember what a great planet it is to be on and what great people we have on it. And Willie Mays was one of them. I have a couple of Willie Mays stories that I love to hear and would want to share. One was at the beginning of the season coming out spring training, Willie Mays' arm was bugging him a little bit. And so he'd remembered that Joe DiMaggio said, well, once in the World Series, his arm was bugging him. And so the first time he got a throw from the outfield, he came up and was just rifled the ball. And even though it was going to hurt him, showing the team that he had a strong arm and not to run on him. So Willie Mays did that like opening day. And then he realized, well, it's like, we're going to play a different team in 3 days and another different team. And I now hurt my arm worse. It's not like the playoffs. And so that was the kid realizing that, the veteran did it just for that one series, the World Series at the end of the season. And Willie Mays, it doesn't work at the beginning. And another, I think it might have even been before Willie Mays came up to the majors, was playing either in the Negro Leagues or in the minors. He played minor league baseball in Minneapolis for a few months before he got called up to the majors.
The Minneapolis Millers, right?
The Minneapolis Millers, yep. In fact, when he got called up to the majors, they were playing a team in like South Dakota, Sioux Falls or something. And he always loved to go to movies when they had night games. So he'd go to a day movie. And all of a sudden they put an image on the movie theater screen right before the movie was to start said, Willie Mays, go call your manager, because they knew he was there, and he was going to be called up to the majors from the Minneapolis Millers.
Wow.
But the story is he faced the great Satchel Paige. And first time up against Satchel Paige threw him a changeup. Willie Mays hit it, bounced off the top of the fence. I think it might have been a home run. And Satchel Paige turned to his third baseman and said, hey, when that little boy comes up again, tell me about it. I want to know. So 2 or 3 innings later, Willie Mays is on the on-deck circle, and he sees the third baseman go over to Satchel Paige and say, yeah, that little boy, he's in the on-deck circle. So then when Willie Mays comes up, Satchel Paige walks a little bit off the mound towards home plate and said, I'm going to throw you 3 fastballs. You're not going to hit a single one of them, and you're going to go sit back down. And so Willie Mays, of course, takes that as a personal challenge, right? He's this up-and-coming kid. He can hit the ball. He's going to show the old man something. So Satchel Paige throws fastball past him, swing and a miss, fastball past him, swing and a miss. After the third pitch, Satchel Paige, as he's releasing the ball, walks off the mound towards home plate, and as the ball's flying ready to hit the catcher's mitt, he says to Willie Mays, just go sit down, boy.
I'm a huge Satchel Paige fan, too. He's got a bunch of...
Yeah, Satchel Paige was a character. He was
Andy was like such an amazing player that didn't make, didn't get to they had the Negro Leagues, and he didn't get to the major leagues till he's in his 40s, and he dominated in his 40s. So if he would have got his whole career, it would have been amazing. But yeah, Willie Mays, I mean, the best nickname ever, the Say Hey Kid. And then if you ever look at his catch, his famous World Series catch, I mean, I know you can look online and they have like lines of where the ball went and where he ran from. And then he made an amazing throw after that. Maybe there's millions of baseball, they all play 162 games, and baseball's been going over for 100 years now. But I think everybody agrees that's one of the top 5 best plays ever, when that's almost impossible to pick. But I don't see how it cannot be.
Yeah.
Wirtz pounds the next pitch over Willie Mays' head. But there goes Willie. And he makes a miraculous catch as he stops a step short of the wall.
Beauty of that catch, to compare it to nowadays, is at the Polo Grounds, where dead center field was like 480 or more feet. Most stadiums nowadays, that ball's a home run. So he runs down the home run, and then he makes the catch. And so basically, and with air resistance and with the angle the ball's coming, it said that the ball got over his head, and then he actually ran it down and caught up to it. Turns and throws and basically keeps the runner from advancing. And it was in the World Series.
Yeah.
So 3 big things. Heads up of the situation of the game, amazing physical play to make it happen, and then the mental wherewithal. Instead of celebrating or anything, he's turning around and he's trying to keep the runner from advancing. So
yeah, I don't even know how he tracked that ball. I mean, it was amazing. So it got to be one of the greatest baseball plays ever. So
and I think it handicapped by the fact that TV isn't like it is now, and we don't see it in 7 different angles in high definition.
So that's the great Willie Mays. We got something to go out on with this on this.
Well, I did see a picture. It was because he's Barry Bonds' godfather. And there's a picture of a young Barry Bonds with Willie Mays in his Giants uniform. And I was going to joke, there sits the greatest baseball player of all time, and some punk kid. Because usually people say, there's the greatest baseball player of all time, and Willie Mays, because of people that love Bonds for stats. But it's like, Willie Mays played in the new park there in San Francisco instead of the Candlestick Park where the wind was always blowing in. He might have had about 80 more home runs.
Yeah, Willie Mays makes everybody's top 5 list for greatest players ever. And like I said, baseball's over. It's coming up on 120 years. So there's so many players, but he makes everybody's top 5. So
I think so. And he had the stats and everything.
Yeah, we'll miss him. Great Willie Mays.
Yes, he was also a great ambassador for after he retired, of his love of the game, and he was around, and people said he loved to tell stories, and he wasn't shy to tell stories about his greatness.
And he used to always wear his baseball hat was too small for his head, so when he ran around the bases, they didn't have batting helmets, they'd have their hats, and it would always fly off because he had it way too small. So
good blow. When we were kids, I had a teammate, his hat always would blow off when he ran the bases. It wasn't because he was fast or because his hat was too slow. It says he'd knock it off on purpose.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the 70s versus the 80s. This is Wolfman Mike reminding you to keep it classy, my babies.
My friend.
What should we cover next? Leave us a message. It's simple. Just click on the link in the show notes and you can leave us a voicemail. Or if you want to send us a Facebook or Twitter message, we can give you a creepy AI voice to go along with your words. Just send those in. Tell us what you want to be here covered. Until next time, this has been the 70s and 80s. Again, keep it classy, my fellow babies.
But my answer.
Depending on how much you liked your sister, you would not want Prince inquiring about her.